Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to Dr. Monkey, where we laugh together and cry together, but hopefully take something away to treat each other a little better. Here's some interesting stories. One about an insanely jealous Karen who stole my identity and just happens to be my mother. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I was in a major car accident in January of 2021. Ironically, I had been taking my boyfriend to the ER because he had bleeding ulcers and ended up getting admitted to the hospital that night. This was still when they were enforcing COVID rules, so I was booted out of the hospital about 3 in the morning. When I left, it was snowing, and not thinking, I hopped on the freeway, which wasn't a good idea. I'd been driving a lifted Jeep Cherokee with mud terrain tires. Not exactly the best for snowstorm driving. Getting off the freeway to go home, my brakes locked up, and I went into a light pole head first at about 60 miles an hour. My Jeep did not have airbags. That was dumb. Needless to say, my car was totaled and had to be extracted from the car by the fire department. This whole time I'd been blacking out and losing consciousness, and I still get random flashes. I don't have all my memories from that night or several months after the accident. I got sent to the nearest trauma center, which was at the same hospital I had just left. The nurses felt pretty bad about kicking me out. I ended up with moderate to severe traumatic brain injury, a broken socket under my left eye, hairline fractures on my skull and left side, bruising behind my ears, and black eyes. I had also cut open the inside of my mouth, had multiple lacerations all over my face. I broke my driver's side window with my face. Broke and bruised some ribs, had hairline fractures in my spine, broke my right wrist, my right knee, my left foot, which required 2 surgeries, and I still need approximately 3 more. Needless to say, I wasn't doing great. I had recently gotten divorced the previous year, and think that my entitled parents decided that my accident was my boyfriend's fault. I had to stay in the hospital for a total of 12 days, in which case the mild family drama exploded into severe family inferno. As I got closer to being released, all I wanted to do was go home to my boyfriend and our kids. He had 2 previously and I had 1. My entitled mother decided that wasn't what she wanted. On the phone, we sound almost identical. The whole time that I was in the hospital, she'd been getting on the phone and impersonating me to my apartment complex manager, even going as far as calling the cops to get my boyfriend and his 2 kids removed from my apartment. They were not on my lease yet. My entitled mother also forged my signature on hospital paperwork and made up a story about how my boyfriend was abusive to me and got him banned from seeing me at the hospital. Again, forging my signature and writing a letter stating I didn't want to see him. This whole time I was still suffering from the effects of my traumatic brain injury and was delirious from the combination of pain meds and brain fog from my head injury. My entitled mother even had the locks changed on my apartment without my consent. When I was finally released from the hospital, I was in a wheelchair because of my broken foot that just had 2 plates and 10 screws surgically put in to hold it together, and an ankle to hip brace on my other leg from my knee being broken. I requested to go home to my apartment, but again, entitled mom played it that I couldn't go home because I had a 2nd-story apartment and couldn't take care of myself. So, I got sent to stay at my parents' house, against my will, an hour away from home because EM wanted to make sure I wasn't going to let my boyfriend come back to my apartment. I spent almost a whole miserable month there. My entitled mom refused to take me home even after I got crutches and was able to bear some weight. Initially, they refused to even go get my crutches from town because they didn't want me to have more mobility. Eventually, it got to the point where I had a friend come pick me up from EM's house so I could go home because they kept refusing to let me go. As I gained clarity in my mind and was taken off the intense pain medication, I was able to start rectifying the situations that EM made a mess of in my life, but I'm still trying to recover in some areas. I didn't find out until much later, when the medical bills started coming in, that Ian had called my boyfriend's health insurance company, impersonating me again, and had me removed from his insurance. It took months of calling and badgering and footwork on my part to get the situation figured out and have the insurance pay for what they were supposed to pay for. It almost caused me to go bankrupt. At the same time, my entitled mother signed me up for minimal health insurance coverage through the state that I had no idea I was enrolled in until I got a bill later stating that I owed back fees. Needless to say, I eventually and completely cut both entitled mom and my father out of my life, finding out how much they tried to control and how much they messed up my life. I ended up getting protection orders after they tried to break into my house, stalked me, and sent family and friends over to harass me. This whole incident was the straw that broke the camel's back. There was quite a bit of retaliation on their side that threw my life into a tailspin ever since, but I'm sticking to my guns and not backing down. Holy jeez! There is so much criminal activity on your mom's part, it's disgusting. I'm glad you're able to start picking up the pieces of your broken life. Just the trauma from the car accident would be enough to throw anyone's life into a tailspin. But what they did is just flat out evil. I hope you're able to find peace and calm soon. Update. First off, I definitely understand those who are skeptical about my story. It's more than a little bizarre, and I'm probably not the best at describing some of the situations. But I seriously appreciate all the great advice that has been given, and I'm looking at some of the other options listed in the comments as well as what I'm already doing. I think the easiest part for me to clear up is the questions about the insurance and my EM getting me off the insurance I have with my boyfriend, and putting me on the state insurance without my or my boyfriend's consent. As an adult, I can call in and cancel my coverage at any time, with or without the policyholder's knowledge. There doesn't need to be a major life change in order to be taken off a policy, usually just to get a new insurance coverage or add someone to insurance. All my EM needed was the insurance information, and access to my information as well as his, which she did. She already had all my personal information, including my social security number, and my insurance information. This is how she signed me up for insurance coverage through the state as well. I'm sure it had something to do with the financial control she could exert over me, as well as trying to totally get my boyfriend out of my life, but honestly, I'll probably never get the real answers to that. The reason why I didn't get the hospital bills immediately is a pretty easy explanation. First off, my car insurance coverage included medical bill payments as well, up to a certain amount of money. At first, going through the billing process, the hospital, orthopedic, anesthesiologists, etc., had to send their bills through my car insurance first, and then through my health insurance. I'm not 100% sure how that all works exactly, and it took multiple tries to explain to all the doctors what was already paid out, who got what money, and the next insurance to bill, as well as it took for weeks for them and myself to realize that while I was in the hospital, the insurance I went in with got canceled mid-hospital stay. So bills got sent out to the insurance I had with my boyfriend, which was followed by confusion from the hospital, insurance companies, and myself trying to figure out when I got cut off and what was covered and what exactly happened. This takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. My entitled mother did tell me eventually what she had done with my insurance and how she changed it, but by that point, it was too late, and I was scrambling to try and rectify the situation and get as much covered from my hospital stay as possible. Even doing that, I still owe nearly $50,000 in medical bills. For those who have had questions about how I'd gotten on his insurance in the first place, when he started the job, he had the insurance from which we had qualified as domestic partners because of how long we'd been living together and how long the relationship had lasted. For everyone wondering if we went to the cops or are filing charges, or anything along those lines. It's a very long story. But yes, we are. I have a very good lawyer who actually represents myself and my boyfriend. It took me a while after I got home to my apartment to get to the point where I cut contact with my entitled mother. When I finally got home, I tried to start seeing my boyfriend again, and we started the long process of trying to heal from what happened, since my entitled mother had essentially kicked him and his 2 kids out of my apartment in the middle of winter. They really had nowhere else to go. The kids ended up staying with friends for a while, and he stayed in his car and rented a hotel room when possible. I wasn't fully aware of what exactly was going on at the time, as my entitled mother had my cell phone and access to my phone, and while I was at her home, she watched like a hawk to make sure I wasn't contacting him. If I did, I got berated, screamed at, and at one point did not have access to my phone, which was all very confusing because I was on very heavy-duty pain medication, as well as having the confusion from the traumatic brain injury. After I made it back to my apartment and started to have more contact with my boyfriend, my entitled mother escalated, staying at my apartment even though I told her I was fine, showing up randomly, and eventually getting so angry that I refused to cut contact with my boyfriend as she threatened to end him. That was when I finally grew a slight backbone and decided that it just wasn't going to get better. At that point, I filed for a protection order, as well as my boyfriend, who copied my paperwork. When the first protection orders got dropped because we didn't have enough evidence, she had gotten a lawyer at this point, but we did not because we couldn't pay for a retainer. And this was before I'd gotten smart enough to install cameras and a call recorder on my phone. My entitled mother went to the city prosecutor's office and told them that she wanted to press charges of perjury against my boyfriend. This is where the friendship with the prosecutor started, and it was very hard for us to get anything to stick because my entitled mother was getting in with our local PD, with our local police department, and the prosecutor. Yes, they ended up going after my boyfriend, and not me. Yes, that is selective prosecution. Yes, it is very illegal. At the same time, my mother and father are retired and apparently have nothing better to do with themselves. They had been in contact with my boyfriend's ex-wife, and at the same time, we were getting beaten down with the perjury case. They also helped my boyfriend's ex-wife start a custody battle for his children. They had been separated for some time, but the divorce had been stalled in court for several years at this point. They also filed in small claims court for lawyer and court fees after our first protection order was removed. My ex-husband had been allowing my daughter to see both of my parents still, which I did fight, and which has probably spurred the grandparents' rights visitation case that they filed during this same time. So we have been fighting one thing at a time and collecting all of the evidence that we can. All of the hospital paperwork, especially those that were forged, had been requested from the hospital. The phone calls to the insurance company needed to be requested, and we needed our lawyer to get those. It wasn't something they were just going to give us, unfortunately. At this point, we have waded through almost all of the court filings my entitled mother has thrown at us, and we are finishing gathering out evidence, so we can counterattack at this point. At the time, our lawyer was telling us to be patient and gather as much as we could, and when we get through the thick of it, we can throw what we have into the system, but we needed and want to have enough to nail them to the wall. From here, we will counter lawsuits both jointly between myself and my boyfriend, and separate lawsuits, as well as submitting what we have for the identity theft. It's a very long process, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to get things moving. For those of you wondering if me and my boyfriend got back together and how that is going, yes, we did get back together. It didn't take long for me to start realizing what was happening when I wasn't being given the heavy narcotics, and my brain started the healing process from the TBI. It did take time for me to wade through everything that happened and try to recall memories. We did get back together, found a new place, and moved back in together with his 2 kids and my daughter. We have had some hard times, and of course, we are both a little damaged from the whole process. But we both have counseling and are doing well. I hope this helps explain and expand on the questions everyone has been asking in the comments. That is so messed up. I'm sorry to hear you went through all of that and the letters were given to the doctors, nurses, or hospital. How could they see that you had no mental, emotional, or physical capability to make those decisions at the time? Might be a good idea to get a living will put in place. Your parents need to be criminally charged with identity theft. What they did was highly illegal, and is the only way you'll be able to get this sorted out in your favor financially and in the courts. Recently, I made the decision to move out of my family's home because I felt like my parents were neglecting me in favor of their dogs. They were always more focused on the dogs, paying for their expensive grooming and vet bills, and even taking them on vacation while leaving me at home. To make matters worse, they refused to pay for my food and expected me to fend for myself. I'm only 17 and still in high school. I tried to talk to them about it, but they just brushed off my concerns and told me to grow up and take care of myself. I felt like I was being completely ignored and that my needs and feelings didn't matter to my parents. They seemed to care more about those daggum dogs than they did about me, and it was really hurtful, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to move out and live on my own. Now, my parents are angry with me and are acting like I've done something wrong. They keep telling me that I'm being ungrateful and I should have stayed and tried to work things out with them. But I don't see how I could have done that when they weren't willing to even listen to me or support me. I don't know how to make them understand that I had to put my own well-being first, especially since they weren't paying any attention to me or supporting me financially. Has anyone else experienced something similar? Any thoughts or advice on how to handle this situation? That would be greatly appreciated. Well, in most states, refusing to pay for your child's food while your child is still a minor is a crime, potentially resulting in jail time. That's just for context. Your parents are abusive. You owe them nothing. You don't need to explain yourself. You just need to get the heck out of there and don't look back. Well guys, that's all for today. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm going to link it right here. The story's about a potential stowaway on board a yacht OP doesn't even own. Check this out if you haven't, and I'll see you next time on Dr. Monkey.